This is Derrick Broze. I'm here at the Horizon Psychedelic Conference in New York City, and I'm talking with Jonathan Thompson. How are you doing?
Hey, good, thanks, Derrick.
So, we just heard you speak about psychedelic parenting, and this is, as I was telling you, one of the more interesting, intriguing topics to me. I'd like you to give first just a brief background on who you are and how you came to be interested in psychedelics and then parenting.
Okay, so I was very interested in psychedelics as an undergraduate, like many people in college. I got interested in psychedelics by reading about Terence McKenna, and I had a number of really powerful experiences with mushrooms. And then I joined a meditation community, and I took about a decade off from using psychedelics. And by the time I had the opportunity to re-experience them again in 2012, I had kids, I had a corporate job, I was a sort of, normal guy. And I found that the content of my experiences was so fundamentally different than what it was when I was a kid or, a young adult in college. In college, it was all sort of aliens and re-experiencing my birth and like really intense visual stuff. And now I found that it was about inner relationships. How am I a better grown-up? How am I a better parent, a husband? How do I interact with my employees better? Like showing me how I can change my interactions to be softer, to be kinder, more compassionate to the people around me. And when I had an ayahuasca experience for the first time, I came home from that and I was so uplifted, and I had these amazing present interactions with my kids. And I just started writing about it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. So my website started out as just a personal blog, me sharing my thoughts and feelings about how the ayahuasca experience specifically for me makes me more compassionate and better dad. And now, 3 years later, I guess, we have a number of contributors. We have a regular podcast. We have a regular comic series to sort of make light of, being a grown-up and having kids and the funny things kids do. So it's just something that's kind of grown organically, and the more that I talk about it, the more people are interested. And I think this is a really important thing, because I think passing on to the next generation your values are the way that this is going to go from being just some people having an experience that's just about themselves to building an actual community.
Absolutely. So I want to get one thing out of the way, because I know people hear this psychedelic parenting, so they're probably imagining dosing a bunch of children with acid or something like that. But so you are a father yourself, as you said.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you were saying in the talk, though, your children aren't of age, though, where they're comfortable or they're ready for a psychedelic experience. Could you elaborate more on that? As far as the legalities of a parent choosing to partake of this medicine with their child, and also the point that you made earlier about waiting for the child to be ready.
Sure. So it's important to stress that the bulk of what we talk about at psychedelicparenting.org is not should I dose my kid or when is my kid ready. The bulk of what we talk about is how do I take my own experiences and use them to be a better dad, to be a better father, to be a better parent, to be a better husband, to be a better member of the community. But eventually this conversation is, if it's something you care about, you want to pass it on to your children. So the really important thing is to build a good container for that, because that's what we've lacked. We've lacked a sort of social structure that supports that experience. In the jungle, very young children will drink ayahuasca. In the ayahuasca religions of Brazil, the UDV and the Santo Daime, children will drink as early as 6 or 8 years old. Sometimes mothers will put a drop of ayahuasca on their nipple before baby nurses. So we're talking about like microdosing kids, kind of. But for us, people in the global north, I think it's important to understand that we don't have the cultural support to really do that in the right way yet. Maybe a couple of generations down the road we'll develop those skills. So it's important that what we do is just be really honest with our kids about who we are and what we do, and as they express interest, one of the policies that we follow as a family is that we don't give our kids more information than they're ready to process. So if they ask a question, we answer it honestly, but we're not going to give them extra stuff when they're not ready for it. And then, as they express interest, then you sort of let the child lead in the sense of like, you know, when a child's the right age and is ready for this, they're going to say, you know, Dad, I think I'm ready to have this experience. And, you know, many more intelligent people before me have talked about this and said, you know, I think the most important thing is to do it in a context where it's legal, because nobody wants to go to prison over these things. I mean, or lose their children, even more importantly. And so, you know, doing it in a context where there's legal protection, where there's an ayahuasca or you know, in a church that has these protections, the Native American church, for example, or taking them someplace where it's illegal, and you know, as long as both parents are in agreement and think this is the right thing to do. But you know, sometimes maybe a kid will say, "I'm ready for it," and you're the dad, and you do have veto rights over that. You know, so it's a dialogue, and the biggest thing about it is to be honest with your kids about your experiences and to be honest with them about what this entails. So it comes into the concept of intelligent drug education. So we're going to look at drug education for our kids in the way that we look at sex education. So we don't, most places, I mean, there is places with abstinence only at drug education, sex education, but those places have really high teenage pregnancy rates and things like that. Intelligent, you know, like balanced people will have a conversation about sex ed that's like, this is what you're going to want to do this, and here's how you do it safely if you're going to do it, and here's why you shouldn't do it maybe and wait till later. That's the kind of dialogue that psychedelic parents should be having with their children. Here's all the drugs that are out there. Here's the effects that they will have in your body. Maybe you want these kind of effects, and maybe you don't want these other kind of effects. And you know, these things are probably for grown-ups, and that's okay, because your brain is developing, and you need to like experience the world. You need to sort of, you know, we're in some ways we're kind of on a serotonin trip. So the serotonin is the main chemical in our body, and we're kind of experiencing the world through that. Like, you know, it's okay to get used to the serotonin trip before you introduce other things.
Yeah, absolutely. So two other points I wanted to get into briefly that you mentioned is separating the experience from what is traditionally seen as religion, religious experience, and you know, bringing that into the realm of spirituality. Could you touch more on that? You know, where you distinguish between these two experiences?
Actually, I don't distinguish between the two of them. I think that when people talk about spirituality, what they really mean is religion, but not the bad stuff that I didn't like when I was a kid about religion. And I often advocate for people to not use the word spirituality, to reclaim the word religion, because when we say freedom of religion, that's something that is protected by the First Amendment of our country. Freedom of spirituality is not protected, and just by using this language, we're giving away our rights. And you know, it's not that we have to be religious people, but you know, we can think of religion. The core of religious experience is connection with the divine, or connection with the highest self, whatever the language is that you use to refer to it. This experience that people have, profound experiences that they have on psychedelics, that's the core of religious experience. So, you know, we don't have to take all the bad stuff that comes with religion.
Pull out the dogma.
Yeah, pull out that stuff that's bad and still call it religion, because it still is. So,
still a belief system.
Right. This idea of I'm spiritual but not religious is a pretty new phenomenon. Spirituality used to be something like specific practices within religious groups, you know. So this idea of I'm spiritual but not religious sort of it came out of like the early to mid 20th century, and people taking like psychological surveys and things like that, and you know, the Gal polls and all this. But you know, I think that we should embrace religion because it's protected by the First Amendment.
Absolutely, I think you're right. Though there's probably it's a reaction to people rejecting the more conservative elements of religion that they felt oppressed by. You know, memory, like you said, memories of I don't have good memories of church. You know, when I was a kid, but I liked, you know, feeling connected. I liked the community. I like these aspects. One of the things that you touch on, which I think is probably just really core to having, not only with you know, as a parent, but just as an individual, is really reclaiming the rites of passage. You know, coming from studying and really just being involved in caring about indigenous causes and American Indian causes. That's something that everything is ritual, everything is ceremony. You know, from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep, and within those ceremonies, there's reasons why we walk around the circle. There's reasons we do this, and so much of that is lost in our Western modern culture, where people are they're ready to, you know, just poo-poo anybody's, you know, rituals or ceremonies. They don't understand the meaning behind it. Speaking generally here, but that's the experience that I've come across. And I've seen that, yeah, it's just because we have not been taught rituals growing up. We don't have rites of passage. You grow up, and there's a lot of people growing up without one or the other parent figures, and they just go into the world and figure things out for themselves. And some of us are able to come out of those experiences a little bit wiser, but it doesn't always work out that way. So what has been your work and your interest in bringing back that element of ritual and rites of passage?
So I gave a talk in March at a conference called Symposia at UMass Amherst, and the title of that talk was Psychedelic Summer Camp. So the theme of the conference was envisioning a post-prohibitionist world. And so I themed my talk, and I covered some of the same topics I covered today, but I themed it in the sense of developing a psychedelic summer camp where we could give our teenagers or our young adults rites of passage into adulthood, because I think that one of the really big sicknesses in our culture is this extended adolescence. We have, you become a teenager, and it sometimes extends through the 20s into the 30s, and we don't have kids yet, you might not be married, you're sort of an adult, you're sort of a kid, but we don't really say to people, here's the line between where now there's a higher expectation of you to be a part of the community. Yeah. What we do is we expect our our teenagers to make adult decisions, but we don't really give them any rights. And our religious forms do have rites of passage, such as confirmation in the Catholic Church or First Communion, but they don't bring with them the sort of confirmation of adult responsibilities and adult rights. So one of the things I would like to see is using these tools as a way to engineer rites of passage. So we're going to take our young adults to the forest, and maybe we have a yurt or the geodesic dome in the woods, and there's a whole sort of week around teaching them values and teaching them songs and appreciating nature and getting away from technology. I think sort of a technology fast would be a perfect part of this. No Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And then at the end of the experience, or in the middle maybe, so that there's time after the end to reincorporate, is to have this really powerful experience of whether it's ayahuasca or peyote or sweat lodge or some kind of thing like that. And then let's talk about it together. And it's something that parents and children do together, and they can work through it together. And now you're a part of the adult sort of members of our family. You're coming to the big kids table, so to speak, and you're going to be part of the conversation and you're part of the decision making in our family.
Absolutely, I think that's tremendously important. Where can we keep up with your work and any future talks that you have going on?
So our website is called psychedelicparenting.org. We have a regular podcast where I interview sort of luminaries in the psychedelic movement about their parenting styles. I'm going to be interviewing adult children of psychedelic luminaries, but also, and the most important, the most valuable ones, I think, are when we do interviews with anonymous or pseudonym interviews with regular people who have had powerful family experiences around psychedelics, and just let them tell their stories. So come and check those out. We're working on building a forum space so that more people can be a part of the conversation there too. And we also have a Facebook page. And so, come check us out.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.